Hi. All right. I got a car in. We'll have a look at it. I'm going to show you what I got, and then I'm going to take some stuff apart. Take the belt off, iron out the belt. Okay. All right. Here's my serpentine belt right here. It runs all over the place. I'm actually gonna take this air horn out. Make it easier for us to see. Tool I'm going to use a serpentine belt tool. It's actually pretty nice. They're pretty low cost. I think this one cost me like 30 bucks. It's got arms. I can reach around stuff. I can, clock this in a couple of different orientations. It comes with a bunch of like low profile, sockets. And the one I'm going to use is I'm going to use this one right here. Now, this guy can, it's kind of a long arm, so it can put a lot of tension on this. We do need to be careful not to put too much on it, because it is possible to put enough tension on this guy to snap the tensioner off. Now, how do I identify the tensioner, and how do I identify which way to turn this thing? Well, it's actually quite simple. I can look down in here, and I know my tensioner is right down there, right down here. And if I pull on the belt, I can actually see my tensioner move, and it tells me which way it needs to go. Now, there is also a thing. There is a belt routing guide right here. Now, care must be used when using these things, because they can, and I've seen them where they're wrong. It isn't right. Somebody swapped the engine, or there was an update from the factory. The due to noise, vibration, or harshness, NVH, there was an update. So there was a new belt and maybe a different pulley or a different routing put in here. So here's my tip, before you take the belt off, make sure that if it's got a sticker that it's right. And then if it's not right, draw it out. It'll really help you a lot. Now, if I just go look up the belt routing for, a car, it may show the factory OE routing. If there is an update to the routing, usually that's found in TSBs. It's found in technical service bulletins. And does it happen? Yeah, happens all the time. Now, what the factory tech is supposed to do is, once he updates and does the campaign on one of these guys to change the belt routing, there's usually a sticker that goes over if it has a belt routing on here. But sometimes they don't put them on, or sometimes they fall off, or, sometimes these things are wrong. And when they're wrong, and you try to put, the belt on the way the sticker says and it's wrong, you could be here for a while trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. So my tip is, check and make sure this is right before you take the belt off. And if it's not right, draw it. It's really not that hard. Okay? So let's have a look-see at this thing. And one of the things I'm going to do is I'm just going to, come down in here. Let me turn on the light. There it is. And I'm going to come down in here and put my wrench. Making sure it goes all the way on. And then move this thing out of the way. Now I'll hit the stop, and then I'm going to take off right here at the alternator. Trying very hard not to get my fingers in the way. And then I'm going to very slowly drop this thing back down. Now, I want to be careful that the wrench doesn't hit an obstruction before it's loose. Because if it does, I'm holding tension on this alternator belt so I could very easily put this guy back on. And then I could reposition my tool so it doesn't hit an obstruction. Get it? Last thing you want is just to pry this belt off of this pulley when it's under tension. You'll snap the spring. So there we are. We've got this guy loose, and now all I've got to do is just pull it off. And this particular one needs to go around, you know, a whole bunch of pulleys on here. There it is. Now, one of the things I need to go around on this one is I need to go around the fan. So I'm just going to get this guy around the fan, pull it out away, being very careful not to break my plastic fan. Come on. And there it is. And if you look at this guy, it looks fairly good. Now I can check it with my handy dandy belt tool. And this one's sticking up nice and high. It's actually a fairly new belt. I'm going to put this in here. There's very little play or slop around it like the other one was. This is a fairly new belt. This one's in good shape. One of the things I'm going to look at while I'm in here is I'm going to run through my pulleys. And I'm just going to, you know, give them a spin, give them a tweak, you know, moving them this way, moving them in and out to see if there's any play. And there is a little tiny bit of play on this one, but it's really not too terrible bad. Same thing with my alternator. I'm going to give it a spin, get a feel for end play. This is my power steering pump. Now, this one has a lot of end play. Is it a bad pump? Nah, pretty much all Ford power steering pumps have a lot of end play on these guys, but you know, let's say this much end play was up here on my alternator. Well, then that would be bad. And I'm going to do the same thing with my water pump. I'm going to give it a spin, and I'm going to check my tensioner pulley. Same thing. So I'm giving it a spin. I'm feeling for roughness. The other thing I'm looking at is I'm looking at the wear patterns on my pulleys. Okay? See how this one is nice and straight? So if this pulley was cocked in here, if it was worn out, this wear mark, this nice clean silver wear mark would be wider. Get it? Or I'd see all kinds of wear. You can see the shiny wear on this guy. It's on the edges. If my wear pattern, my shiny metal, went all the way down into the groove, well, that would be a problem. So if I don't have one of those cool little tools, I can use one of the pulleys to check. You know, I can just put this thing down in here, shine a light from in back, and then look and see if there's any gap on this thing, which there should be. It shouldn't go all the way to the bottom. I think I have one. Let me see if I can even get a picture of this. I don't know if you can see it or not. You can see it doesn't go all the way to the bottom. See a little bit of light in there? And that's what we're looking for. Got it? Okay. I'm going to get this thing kind of put back on, and then we'll talk just a little bit more. Okay, so I've got the belt all the way back on, except for putting it around the alternator right here. So I'm going to get in here again with my little tool. Put it on my alternator. Come on. Come on. There we go. Oops. Now, before I go fire this thing up, because if I fire this up and the belt isn't on correctly, it's going to shred this belt just like that. So one of the things I look for is I'm going to look where the belt enters the pulley and leaves the pulley. And I'm going to put an eyeball on every single one. Comes in, goes out. Comes in, check down there, comes out. Goes around my tensioner, and then I can see it going into and out of my crankshaft correctly. and then there I go. Now, one last thing I want to talk about real fast. I want to talk about clutch fans. This is a rear wheel drive truck. It has a mechanical clutch fan on it. So can we test this thing? Yeah. Now, if you notice, I can spin this thing. I can give this thing a flick, and it does spin. Now, if I work this thing a little bit, hang on. Inside this clutch fan is a silicone. It's like a thick gel-like stuff, and there's veins in there. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of spreading this thing out. So when I flick it, it should have some tension on it, and it should loosen up as I do this. That tells me that it's, still has the fluid in it and it's still doing what it's supposed to. So if I stop and let this, rest for a second, that gel is going to fall to the bottom, and then it's going to be harder for me to move. Get it? And then the other thing I check for is on the back where this, the water pump shaft goes into my cooling fan. I'm going to look right there and check for leaking of this gel. Now, if they leak, what happens is dirt collects on them, and it just turns into this like big muddy part. And generally, you get it all over the pulley, you get it all over the belt. Literally, this stuff, if it leaks out of this clutch fan, it goes everywhere. Get it? The other thing I look for is inside all of the idler and this idler pulley and the tensioner pulley. There's a sealed bearing in there that's packed with grease. If this grease seal fails, it shoots out grease out of here, and even if it's not loose, it's gonna be bad very, very quickly because it's lost all its grease. So these are the things I look for and look at when I'm inspecting a belt. It isn't just the belt. I'm looking at the pulleys. I'm also looking at the alignment to make sure that something's not bent or out of place, and like one pulley is further forward, which I would see in the wear marks on the pulley again. Get it? Those are the things I look at when I'm looking at belts. We good? Thanks, man.